There are a lot of entrepreneurs that have one shot, one exit in their lifetime. And if you don't get it right, it's life-changing negatively. I got literally laughed out of Fortune 500 boardrooms when I was telling people it was going to change their business. It was the fastest growing non-televised media company in the soccer space in the world. Sold it 14 months later. So it was like 0 to 8-figure in 14 months.
And that's the interesting thing about sports is like this cultural magnet that brings everybody together.
One of the biggest things I talk about is if you sell your company based on any financial metric, you are leaving money on the table. I always call it the irresistible exit story, where they're like, I have to have max customers, which could take years and lots of money, or I could just buy them.
I'm passionate about this because I've lived it and I've seen it.
I never sold a company on a financial multiple, and I would only sell for what I was willing to sell for. I'll sell for 10 million. Well, how do you get to 10 million? Well, let me show you. Well, yeah, but you only did $250,000 in EBITDA. I'm like, I don't care. Do you want these customers or not? It's not about the EBITDA.
I like the sound of that. All right, we're back. Born to be great. Nick, what's up, man? How you doing?
It's a good day to have a good day. Mac, we appreciate you hopping on, man. You're a big dog.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is awesome. So if you all don't know who Mac is, we'll introduce him very briefly. But this man has done so many cool things that we would need like 3 podcasts to cover his whole story. So we're going to do our best to get very tactical with growing your business, selling your business, what it's like. Because Mac sold 6 companies, founded a bunch of businesses, sold 6 companies. He owns a professional soccer team. So he also helps founders and entrepreneurs help sell their business now. So there's so much to this man, and we really, really appreciate him coming on. So Mac, thanks for joining us on the podcast. And yeah, looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, excited to chat.
So would love to learn more just briefly about your story. Like, how did you sell these 6 companies? You're owning the soccer team. Like, what was it like growing up for you? Did you know you were going to own a soccer team one day? Can you just give us a little bit of a brief background? And then I really want to get into the tactics of all this stuff you're doing nowadays.
Yeah, thanks. Well, when I think back about my life, my background, growing up, I'm an only child, grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. And life for me was literally 100% about soccer. It was, I played the first time for a little YMCA team. I was 4 or 5 years old and fell in love with it. My town, my area, all my friends played baseball. Some played football. And I just kind of fell in love with soccer, which was not a popular sport where I grew up. And so most of my goals and dreams for life were soccer related. I wanted to play in college. I wanted to be an All-American. I wanted to play professionally. That's like all I thought about. And so for me, I guess, fortunately, my parents supported that. I was able to kind of check off a lot of those life goals and dreams as I thought of them as a kid. But until the day I stopped playing soccer, that's really all I thought about, like being an entrepreneur. I didn't take an entrepreneur class in college. I didn't take a business class in college. I mean, I went to college to play soccer. I was a psychology major, so literally it wasn't even on my radar. So I kind of went from playing soccer to, okay, now I need to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. That obviously came to an end for me very quickly because, at my age, there was no MLS. There was really no pathway to play. I played 1 year professionally in what's now called the USL, but there just wasn't much there. So yeah, that sort of ended. And then I became an entrepreneur, and in a lot of ways feel just blessed and lucky and fortunate. I started an internet company in the first quarter of 1995, right when Netscape launched the commercial web browser. So I was literally at like ground zero of the internet. And that just kind of led me on a really exciting and interesting path from there.
Super cool. So did the first business was internet business. When did you sell that company? And what were y'all doing?
Yeah, so that first company, sign of the times, it's hard to even literally imagine it now, but we were helping companies kind of develop their initial internet presence, early internet sites, early internet applications. But when we launched the company, I mean, the internet was so new. It was like, gray backgrounds, everything centered. The idea of selling something on the internet was crazy. I got literally laughed out of Fortune 500 boardrooms when I was telling people it was going to change their business. And they were like, you're a 25-year-old kid. You don't know anything what you're talking about. And so we were really early, which, was good fortune. We grew very fast. We helped some, pretty big companies developed their first kind of internet presence and earliest software applications that were internet deployed. But it was a garage startup. We started it in a 1-bedroom apartment. My kitchen table was also my desk. My wife was working a couple jobs just to like pay the bills. And so I went from truly struggling to pay the light bill to we sold the company about 3 years later into a roll up. It was an 8-figure exit. I was in my, kind of mid to late 20s. So I kind of checked off every financial goal and dream of my life in my mid 20s. I couldn't even think bigger than that. So, it was kind of and that business we didn't intend to sell. Like, we didn't design it to sell. We loved what we were doing. We were excited about the internet. We just got an offer we couldn't refuse.
When you sold the business, did you, you said you checked off some boxes. Did you like go buy any fun toys? I'm just curious, like a young kid with a good amount of money, it's just sold his business. He's got to celebrate a little bit, right?
100%. I mean, honestly, I didn't even understand money. I grew up, and so I literally had it written down on a sheet of paper in this little book that were like, a 911, a red 911 convertible, a beach house, a house. And I mean, I literally just went down the list and bought it all. And people tell you this all the time, but it is true. Like, I still love cars. I've always liked cars, but like, after you check that stuff off, it's just kind of like, okay, now what? I mean, I sold the beach house because I was like, I don't want to go to the same house all the time. I want to travel. I mean, you just but yeah, I absolutely bought a bunch of material things, great house. I guess in some ways probably thought I'll probably never have to work again. I mean, that wasn't my mindset because I was excited to start my next company. The day after the IPO, the company that bought me went public. I resigned the day after the IPO to start my next business. So I didn't even skip a beat.
And the next business was a soccer media company, correct? If I did my research right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I was sort of pulling my passions together, right? So I was a big soccer guy. That was kind of in my veins. And my first company was mostly working with what I considered, boring big companies. We did have one client that was in the sports space. And my kind of dream was, how do I take this love of technology and everything that's going on in the internet space and take it to soccer, which is the subject matter that I love. And so, yeah, we started a soccer-based kind of internet media company that was one of the funnest experiences of my life. Even to this day, looking back, it was just an incredible business. We scaled it up. That was the fastest growing non-televised media company in the soccer space in the world. Sold it 14 months later. So it was like 0 to 8-figure, in 14 months. So it was a kind of crazy whirlwind.
Dang. Okay, so I'm gonna need Nick to chime in here because on the sports side of things and the media side of things, combining those two way back in the day, like being the first. What do y'all think about the landscape now? Because like media is obviously such a huge lever to pull, it's such a big powerhouse. There's these media companies selling. Sports teams are trying to leverage the media as much as they can. Like Mac, like with your experience selling that business fairly quickly, and Nick with what you've been doing in sports, like what do y'all think of that whole landscape today, and like what it's going to look like going forward?
And Mac, you don't even know this, but you looking at this now, you had sold one of your businesses to Sports Engine.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was with the Cowboys, I got cut in year 2, ended up being hired by a guy that was one of Jerry's business partners, Rob Wexler. So Rob saw what Sports Engine did, buying up all those businesses. So then he started what was called Blue Star Sports. And I'm sure you know the story. They bought 26 businesses over the course of about 18 months, sold it to Genstar. He had a 5-year non-compete. That ended in late 2022. So when I joined, we bought another youth sports club management software called Playmetrics and Crossbar. And then that ended up scaling like crazy. We sold it in 18 months. They end up buying Stack or selling to Stack and then like transitioning people to that platform. And then they just bought, Sports Engine. Is your business still within, Sports Engine, or do they migrate all these businesses over the years to, I guess, one platform? And then we can touch on the media stuff, Justin.
Yeah, no, it's like crazy to hear all those names that I certainly know.
Yeah.
So I sold a business called Kick, KYCK. So kick.com, which was, again, another just kind of passion project, if you will, solving some real world issues that I saw in the soccer space as a parent because my daughters were playing. And I was like, this is crazy how broken it is and how antiquated it is. I love technology. I can fix this. And so we started Kick. When we sold to Sports Engine, NBC Sports, the funny thing is, I think and believe and would argue with most people that we actually had the best technology in the space at the time. But pretty much immediately after they acquired us, they turned off all of our tech.
Yeah.
They just wanted a distribution deal I had, some partnerships I had landed. They wanted, my team. I joined their M&A team for my earn-out periods, which was a year. And so I think they were seeing things that were certainly valuable and led to, our exit. But it was interesting that they were our technology, which I thought was our real differentiator and our moat. They just didn't care about that. I mean, they literally just turned it off. And so,
Yeah.
they still own, I think if you go to our original URL, it still forwards to Sports Engine or whoever owns it now.
Yeah.
But a lot of that technology just kind of got buried into the fabric of the organization. So,
Yeah, that's probably like, I'm thinking between Sports Engine and Stack. I mean, that's got to be 50 companies.
yeah,
Like,
no, it's been very consolidated. And it's one of the things, I mean, I talk a lot about with, founders now is looking at these spaces that are just naturally acquisitive, that are
Yeah.
big markets, but you have buyers that just want or need very niche things, technology or teams or customer list or brands. I mean, they end up doing tons of acquisitions. So it's a good space to be in. And I've been tempted to go back into it several times just because it's kind of a area of passion. But
I was just about to ask if there's a little business opportunity here.
yeah, it seems like if you can carve out a niche and you can grow quickly, or you can prove that there's kind of demand for what you've created, I do think there's a very obvious pool of buyers for companies like that. And it's people outside of the U.S. don't even really completely understand it. I live in Spain part of the year, and obviously soccer or football, international football is so massive. But at the youth level, it's not pay to play. I mean, kids don't pay. They just, are part of a local club, or they get picked up by a really nice club. Here in the United States, as a parent, or if you have neighbors or whatever, I mean, kids are paying thousands of dollars a year to play competitive sports. So it's a multi-billion-dollar business that's got a lot of passion tied to it. So it's actually a really, really good industry. But to Nick's point, it's been consolidated very aggressively by a few players.
Do you think that it's gonna, I guess, with the consolidation of a few players, do you think, I mean, that does lead to opportunity? Again, like sort of like to my question earlier of going forward, like what does the landscape look like in y'all's opinion? Because I think a lot of people do see the opportunity and they are trying to pour into it,
there was one wave, at least on the technology side. I can't speak to the actual operator stuff, but there was a whole wave of like consolidation around max time. And then 5-7 years later, there was some of these next gen players that, built better, technology focused on, whether it was soccer, lacrosse, volleyball, baseball, and those big guys didn't innovate. So they started eating market share from them. And the small guy ended up buying the big guy. And, I think and I can only speak to technology side because I spent, 3-4 years there, but then you're seeing all this private equity money flow, into youth sports, and those folks are going to want, technology that's going to, support all of these acquisitions and run them more, efficiently. But yeah, I mean, if you do have ideas, Mac, I've got ideas too. We should jam on it sometime.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I do think, to some degree, not even being dramatic, I just literally believe that, I want to say all bets are off, but that is a little too extreme. But like AI's just ripped through the landscape so fast that like the moats and hurdles to creating software are effectively zero now. And, the switching cost has also dropped really fast. So the hooks that people used to put into these youth organizations, and there was so much data and there were so many transactions. I mean, that's why it was valuable to people. Now, I mean, it's easy for a soccer team or a club or a lacrosse team or whatever it is to literally just be like, oh, there's a better tool, let's switch next season. That used to be virtually impossible. Now it's that sort of barrier of entry's dropped a lot. So it'll be interesting to see how the space kind of plays out. I love sports because of the passion. I think that's sort of hard to match in a world that we get more and more digital and more kind of tied into technology. I think there will be a boomerang, or kind of the pendulum will swing back to like what makes us uniquely human. And it's like having a beer with a friend, having a coffee, going to a sporting event. Those are things that are like really, really powerful, unique human experiences. So being involved in sports, I think, has a huge future, just kind of period, because of what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to skip over like the rest of your story, but like I do want to transition to the sport. I mean, you sold a bunch more companies, but then you now own a soccer team that you said is 117 years old. I don't even want to try to pronounce the name. Like, how do you say the name so I don't butcher it?
Well, there's two ways to pronounce it. There is the way I pronounce it, which is Algeciras, and then there's the proper Spanish way, which I probably still wouldn't be able to say, but I don't have the good Spanish accent. But yeah, Algeciras. If you look at a map of Spain, Algeciras is literally the Strait of Gibraltar, and so it is the very bottom. When I'm sitting in my seat in the stadium, the Rock of Gibraltar is right behind. I'm looking at it. And then Africa, Morocco, is 14 kilometers away. So you can literally see Africa from
Super cool.
Algeciras. It's a really unique place on Earth. But yeah, the team is 117 years old. So it's, rooted in, tons of history, multi-generational fans. It's a really special place because Algeciras as a town is effectively a port, right? So again, the Strait of Gibraltar, there are massive ships from all over the world that are passing through the Strait of Gibraltar 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the town is very, I would almost call it blue collar, hardworking port employee. The port is the biggest employer. But 15, 20 minutes up the road is Soto Grande, which is Valderrama Golf Course, #1 golf course in Spain, the #1 polo club in Spain. Messi has a hotel on the marina. It is this phenomenal, beautiful coastal area. So blue collar town surrounded by some of the most beautiful resorts and stuff in Spain. So it's a really cool and unique area.
Sounds like Nick and I have to go take a trip to a game. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So with your passion for soccer, were the businesses more of like a means to an end to buy the team one day, or do you know it's like I just want to own a team somehow, some way? Obviously selling these companies will help with that. Like, how did that whole? I guess how did you buy the team in that sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, if I was talking to you 10, 15 years ago, I would have said then, it's a dream. It's kind of a bucket list item that I'd like to own a team someday. My wife and 2 daughters and I lived in Barcelona back in 2014 for about a year. I'd pulled my daughters out of school to travel the world. We moved to Barcelona, but it was only for a year. And during that time, I started imagining, in retirement, what I thought of as like when I really truly slow down, I would love to buy a little team somewhere in Spain that I want to spend time, and it just would be a fun project. But it really felt like something I would do later in life. And then about probably 6 years ago now, 5, 6 years ago, I just started thinking, with promotion and relegation, with what's going on with the global sort of the globalization of literally everything, I think there's an opportunity there that might be even a business opportunity. It might not just be a passion project. There could be a business opportunity. And so I started taking it more seriously, looking at clubs, looking at opportunities. And then eventually, it's been 4 years ago now, I kind of narrowed it down to 2 or 3 that I thought really met the criteria. And it went from, this maybe retirement bucket list thing to like, I'm just going to do it now. So we, kind of moved the timeline up and bought the team. So yeah, that's kind of how it sort of evolved over the years.
Nice. So are y'all doing any sort of like, so with what we're doing here with Sporting Jacks is, there's a lot of real estate and development brought into the investment into the team, which is like, boosted the valuation like sort of crazy. And obviously it's formed more of a, I don't know, I'm more of a cash flow business around the team just because, the team's got their seasons. Obviously we got pro men's, pro women's here, but the real estate that we're developing is really like the 365. Hey, you can use the stadium for concerts, events, stuff like that. We've got the adjacent real estate. Nick's, big into that world as well. Like, are y'all doing stuff like that over in Spain as well?
Yeah, so I think the space is evolving, and it's one of the things that I saw and got excited about in terms of vision. So when I lived in Barcelona in 2014, I bought season tickets to FC Barcelona on the black market. There were 100,000 people on a waiting list, so I kind of went the back door and bought these amazing, 50-yard line season tickets. But one of the things that really stuck with me was literally at that time, Messi, Neymar, Suarez, Iniesta, Xavi, what I think is one of the best teams ever assembled in the history of game. I watched them play, every week. But what was crazy to me is there was no American style entertainment. Like, you literally showed up for the match at kickoff, and when the final whistle blow, like 100,000 people just go home. And to me, it was like, if I took my daughters to a baseball game, you're there 2 hours early, and you're tailgating and experience and music and parking lot. And I kept thinking, that's coming to Spain. Like, I know it's coming. I mean, it's just that part of American sports is just great. And so when we bought the team, a lot of my thinking was, how do we bring some of the American style business, capitalism, honestly, but also like just entertainment value to the sport. So, the long answer is yes, we've, just scratched the surface. I mean, now we do, in conjunction with the city council, we'll do like fan zones, a couple times a season pre-game, but we're literally having to like train and educate the fans that like that's a thing. Like, literally the first time we did it, we said free beer for anybody that comes in an Algeciras jersey. If you're a season ticket holder, like, free beer on me. Just show up 2 hours early. We're going to have kegs and festive. And still people show up like 20 minutes before the game because they can't conceive of like, why would I be there 2 hours early? And so it's a funny and fun kind of process that we're going through. We do rent out our stadium. I mean, England's, female, the World Cup, Women's World Cup team played there not long ago. Finland, China, the youth, Spanish youth national team, Lamine Yamal was playing in our stadium not too long ago with the Spanish youth national team before he got called up. So we're doing some of that, but it is a long process because it's just not what's typical in Spain. So it's evolving.
Nick, what do you think about that? Because you're deep into this right now and everything you're doing. Like, I'm curious because I feel like there's so much opportunity to, basically create like another business. So many opportunities from the sports assets and just the brand in general.
Are you saying like leveraging sports for
Yeah, just
other?
like what Matt was saying, just leveraging the team to bring other people into the vicinities,
Yeah.
hang out. Like, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, just seeing how, Jerry ran the Cowboys, he pioneered the league level kind of business model as well as the team level. I mean, he does, more local revenue than he does from the NFL media distributions. And these numbers are a couple of years old, but it's 300 million in, local sponsorship events, does 100 million in concerts, tours, and events. He's utilizing his venue, 365 days of the year. He built, adjacent real estate to their headquarters that does like 60 million in NOI. So he's institutionalized like the playbook for, sports owners. I mean, you got to be a vertically integrated sports media, entertainment, real estate platform. But then, he's used the Cowboys brand to build so many other, businesses. And there would be, and that's the interesting thing about sports is like, it's this like cultural, magnet that brings everybody together. So, and he celebritized everything and they just want to be a part of it. So yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I think it's the next, wave of sports.
So we got to start study Jerry Jones is what I'm hearing.
What's interesting about it is I believe, and it sounds like, I mean, I'm sure, you guys would say, I think you can see these things coming, but, when I think about our club, 100 years of history is powerful, but it's also really difficult to make change. Like if I wanted to update the logo because I'm a design, I like brands, I like design, there would be like riots in the street because I changed the logo. It's not a like, hey, let's make it cool and modern. It's like, that's our logo, don't touch it. And so in a really good way, I don't even mean that necessarily as a bad thing, but so I think a lot of my early excitement when I see what other, in other sports, Jerry Jones, great example. It's a franchise, it's a media company, it's real estate. Like those things are all coming. But it's like moving, at a glacial pace to try to get fans. And the American consumer is also very different. Again, if I think about my daughters, when I took them to a sporting event, whatever it was, the Panthers here in Charlotte, or to a baseball game or a hockey game, like it's very American to like buy a hat and buy a souvenir cup and get the bat and, like spend money and make it an experience. We have very passionate fans that will buy a jersey once every 3 years. Like that's their
Huh.
merchandising budget. Like they don't go to matches and buy a bunch of stuff, and it's very different. And so when I bring my friends over, if you guys came over for a match, or my friends literally walk into the store and like, give me one of those and two of those and a hat, and do you have this in my size? And like they spend more in like an hour than a whole section of our stadium will spend in a week. I mean, it's just
That's
an
really
American
interesting.
consumer.
Real Madrid has 175 million Instagram followers. Dallas Cowboys have 5 million. So the fandom over there,
Wait, so but Real Madrid has that many followers, but like Jerry Jones is like crushing them on like the business side of things, like revenue wise?
well, I mean,
Real Madrid's
it's
pretty big.
different, consumer, but like it's these brands are just so big and they're so passionate over there, and I don't even know how they're monetizing.
Well, I
Web.
try to explain to people, when people that are not soccer people, which again, it's growing so quickly and massively in the US. So that's less and less true. But, some of my early companies that we talked about were soccer related. And I would talk to friends or investors or partners, and they would say, yeah, soccer is really not that big. And I would say, when Real Madrid and Barcelona play in a Clasico, it's like 6 times the size of a Super Bowl on a Tuesday. Like it's just a random, like two teams playing will get more viewership. They're literally like the GDP of Spain drops when they play. Like people don't work. I mean, things shut down. And so, and that's true all over the world. Outside of the US, when certain teams play, the GDP of the country drops. If they win birth rates go through the roof 9 months later. I mean, it's just like, it's massive. It doesn't have many parallels. And so, yeah, the sport is big. It's why, the technology side, the media side, there's just a lot there. But yeah, I'm just kind of, touching on a
How
little
much more like viewership the World Cup versus the Super Bowl? I mean, it's like not even close.
It's not even the same galaxy. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like 1 in 4 humans on Earth watch the World Cup. I mean, it's like, it's hard. It's even, people in Africa or parts of the world that are very remote will like walk for 2 or 3 days to watch Ghana play on a little black and white TV because they know there's a TV in the town, and they'll, like it just
Wow.
doesn't. I had the whatever luxury privilege gift of, I've played in Brazil and Argentina. I met Pele. I went to his house. I saw Maradona play in Argentina. And I remember when Maradona was playing for Argentina in their stadium, there were literally people that spent their life savings to get a ticket to watch him play one time in their life. Like that was, Michael Jordan is an incredible athlete, and Tiger Woods and all these people. Maradona was worshipped like a god in that country. I mean, literally people would spend their life savings to just physically see them one time. That was their life dream. It's just hard to fathom.
Wow. Okay, so you just casually mentioned you got to hang out with Pele at his house. Like, I'm very curious. Like, what was that like? Because he's also one of the goats. You know.
Yeah, it's one of the amazing things about life for me. I mean, I got to really truly soccer took me to my idols in a lot of different ways. I grew up with Pele, of course, as my idol. I was fortunate to play on a U.S. team that did a tour through Brazil and Argentina. And on that trip, we went to Santos. We played against Santos. We played against Sao Paulo, all these teams. And then we went to Pele's house, got to meet him, take a picture, get a signed jersey. Over my life, I met Messi, Neymar, Ronaldinho, pretty much everyone, with the exception. I saw Maradona play. I never met him in person, which was, he unfortunately died. I thought I would meet him later in life, but I never had that opportunity. But it's one of the cool things about when you have a real passion in life and you have some, degree of success, or you're just deeply involved in an industry, you can kind of navigate to this, the top of that pyramid, which was, some of the highlights of my life.
Any patterns that you saw meeting those guys, like that made them great? I'm just curious. Like, we're sort of going a little bit all over the place now, but to meet all those, greats, like anything that stuck out to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the to me, of course, they're just natural gifts and God-given gifts or whatever, but the incredible focus, like Messi, I mean, people used to always say it's like a dog with a bone, like him scoring, like there's just nothing on earth that can take his, passion away from what he is doing on the field. It just, like, everything else is so secondary or tertiary. And I think maybe the greatest example, that last World Cup final, to me, before the World Cup, people kept saying, who do you think is going to win the World Cup? And I literally would answer the same way every time. I would say, I think France is going to win. Nothing on earth would make me happier than Argentina to win. It's just impossible. Like, they can't win. I mean, Messi's the best player in the world, probably the best in history. The team is not capable of winning the World Cup. I mean, he literally, I think, personally willed that team to the World Cup victory. It's like he carried them. Again, great players. They all played great. They all wanted it for him. But just that, like, there was no scenario in Messi's mind where he wasn't winning the World Cup. Like, I just think that's so unique and special. And most humans, I mean, I've been, I don't know, fortunate, successful by some very small measure in business or whatever. I've never had drive or that ability to focus in on one thing to that kind of outcome. I just don't have it in me. I've optimized for family. That's been a big priority of mine. I have tried to work hard in business. But he and I think the others, like, they're just so locked in on, that is my life. That is what's going to happen. That's unique.
Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense. Well, I know we've talked about a bunch of different stuff. I do want to talk about selling businesses, because I think it's what you're doing now. I think it's super important to anyone, whether you're just starting a business, whether you're established in business, because this is not, we were saying this before we started recording, this is not like an overnight process where you just say, okay, I'm going to sell my business and, hope everything turns out. Like, there's things that you can do that can help you save money, that can help you get, more of a multiple, more money in your pocket. So would love to just touch on some things that that you've been doing with what you're doing now, with what you're doing with founders. Like, again, say you're starting a business. Like, what should people be thinking about if they want to sell their business one day?
There are a couple of really, really common misconceptions, and they're quite dangerous, candidly, for entrepreneurs. I'm a passionate entrepreneur. And when people ask me what I do, I still describe myself that way, even though I sold my last company back in 2018. People say, what are you doing? And I'd say, I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, that's just one of the best decisions of my life. But one of the mistakes that entrepreneurs make is they believe, I think it's like 91% when they do studies, say that they want to sell their business at some day in the future. And so what entrepreneurs do is they build a great company. They're focused on it. Their heads down. They're passionate. And they think at some point in the future, they can sort of lift their head up and say, now I need or want to sell my company. And they're just going to be able to sell it. and the odds are incredibly low. It's only about 20% of people who are trying to sell their company. So they've built a good business, they've hired an M&A advisor or broker, they're trying to sell it actively. Only about 20% of them ever close a deal. And it's low single digits of those. So 20%, low single digit of those that actually, if you interview them post-exit, maximize value. Most people will do exactly what I did, which is I sold my first company, and within 4 months, if you asked me, it was life-changing in a lot of ways. I left millions of dollars on the table simply not knowing what I needed to do or how to set it up and how to negotiate and how to find the right buyers. All the things that, to me, nobody teaches that stuff. And I'm just really fortunate that, I sold 6 companies. And so I was fortunate enough to make all the mistakes, learn the hard lessons, and not have that be my only one. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that have one shot, one exit in their lifetime. And if you don't get it right, it's life-changing negatively. And so, I learned a lot of those lessons the hard way, and I kept having more at bats. And over time I got, I think I figured out some things that I would almost consider formulaic. So just really high level, a few things I would say. Number one is, you absolutely, as an entrepreneur, are told that your value is based on financials, your last 12 months revenue, your last 12 months EBITDA. Nick knows from the private equity world, like that's just the way they talk. That's the way they think. And so we as entrepreneurs are sort of, have it pounded into us. That's what matters. And the reality is, from my point of view, you will never sell for a premium if you're selling for an EBITDA multiple. What you really want as an entrepreneur is you want to sell based on your strategic value, and you want to find someone in the world that needs it or has to have it. Something unique that you've built. It could be technology, it could be your brand, it could be your customer list, whatever it is that you have that's highly strategic. If someone in the world needs that or has to have it because it unlocks something for them, the multiples are off the chart. And that is a totally different game, a game that most people are not playing. And so I really try to help people understand that's the focus, is like, what strategic value are you building? How do you protect it so that it's truly, not something that someone can start tomorrow? It's not a commodity. And then how do you find someone in the market that needs it or wants to have it? And so at the highest level, that's where I think what I've done with Exit DNA and what I've tried to help people, like, I share stuff literally every day on social media, and I do lots of talks. That is one of the biggest things I talk about, is if you sell your company based on any financial metric, you are leaving money on the table.
So say you're doing, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up right now. So you're doing 5 million EBITDA. Usually the industry multiples, it says call it 5 times. You'll suffer 25 million.
Yeah.
What in that scenario, you're walking them through to get another, 1 or 2 bumps, and to get, 6, 7 times. You saying, all right, we're doing well financially, but like we need to, is it a storytelling? Like, are we going into the negotiation with the buyers saying like, hey, y'all need this? More of just like, oh, we're doing $5 million. Like, is it framed differently? Is it actually, going back and restructuring the org chart, like getting some, like how does that actually work?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I would say, again, really high level, this stuff you can get really granular and tactical quickly. But at a high level, it is that you are generating 5 million in EBITDA because you're doing something really well. Like, there's a reason that you're doing that well. And maybe it's because you've created some incredible technology, or maybe you have 10,000 customers that are buying your product or services, and that's what's leading to 5 million in EBITDA. Well, there is someone out there that looks at those 10,000 customers and said, if I had those 10,000 customers that were loyal to me and buying my products, that actually is worth $100 million in the first year, because my products are $10,000, not $2,000, which is what your products sell for. A lot of, we talked, Nick was, we were talking about, NBC Sports and my company Kick. A lot of my exit value came down to, we had created an exclusive partnership. There are 9,000, or at the time there were 9,000 youth soccer clubs in the United States. 6,000 of them So 3/4 of the market were using my technology because I had an exclusive partnership with a player carding company. So if you wanted those clubs and you wanted those cards, you could either go out and try to sell them yourself and spend years trying to assemble them, or you could buy my company and get 6,000 tomorrow. And if you wanted a fast way to enter the market, you bought my company because we had 3/4 of it already. So the day after the deal closes, they're your customers. And if your average price is $2,500, that's $15 million in your first year if you're just selling them your own products. So it's really reframing using their math, not your math. If you're talking 5 million EBITDA, you're talking about your math and multiples of your math. What's it worth to them? And that's where it really becomes interesting and powerful. So it's kind of a reframe. I always call it the irresistible exit story. You have to have something that makes it like irresistible, where they're like, I have to have max customers. And if I want them, the only way to get them is to go out and try to sell them myself, which could take years and lots of money, or I could just buy them.
Is that story being told usually by the founder? Is it because like the reason I'm asking this is because when we sold our business, we sort of worked ourselves out of a job knowing like the next buyer's coming and they don't want to buy us. They want to buy a team who can run the business, which increases the value of the business. So is that story with your founders that you're working with? Are you telling them like, hey, you got to sort of take a step back unless you want to stay on and like have your team tell the story and run the business? Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah. I mean, founder dependence is incredibly negative for two reasons. One is for you as a founder, it's negative because you are tied to your business. It is basically a job, right? And so you are in the critical path of decisions and getting things done and selling and delivering. But it's also incredibly negative for exit value. To your point, nobody wants to buy a company where the founder is the one that makes the sales numbers or delivers to the customers or keeps the customers or writes the code. So the more you extract yourself from the day-to-day business and the critical path of the business, you're actually benefiting personally because you're getting freedom. Your exit value is going up along with that. So I spend a lot of time making sure entrepreneurs understand that it's called the founder's paradox. The more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is. And so you have to get out of the day-to-day. So yeah, that's if I'm working with a company and the founder is in the sales calls and doing the delivery, I'm like, you just have a high paying job. And if you sell your company, they're going to lock you down in an earn out and you're going to have to prove it for 5 years. The last company I sold, I was the largest shareholder, but I didn't have, I had an office and a desk, but people didn't know when I was in the office. They didn't know if I was in town. They didn't know if I was in the country. I had no role. Everything ran with other people and SOPs. And so that is a maximum value situation where you can look a buyer in the eye and say, like, it runs the same whether I'm here or not. I'm not needed at all. That's just a better business.
I'm passionate about this because I've lived it and I've seen it. But like, it's really a real thing where like if you don't have the systems, even the software that can help you have your team run the business without you, obviously there's probably some businesses where you're maybe needed a little bit. But like, I was literally looking at a business to buy recently, and this guy wanted a crazy number. I'm like, dude, you're like, I don't really need you anyway. Plus, the numbers didn't make sense. But I was like, it's not set up to what you want for it. And like a lot of founders think they're worth a lot more than they are because of this exact reason.
Yeah.
So like I'm sure when you're working with them, their minds are probably like blown. They're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know this. It's like you said, no one teaches this because one, most people haven't sold a business, and two, I sort of think it's not taught so these buyers can sort of not take advantage of people, but usually when they're buying a business, they know they're going to get a good return on it too. So like there's a reason they're buying it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a tragedy too. I mean, I think a lot of, and you're seeing it even more right now. They call it the silver tsunami. The baby boom generation. It's a lot of them are business owners and they're retiring and want to sell their business or transfer it in some way, and they've thought that their business was worth $5 million or 6 million or 10 million, whatever the number is, and then they go out and meet with an M&A advisor or they get a valuation done, and then people sort of dig into their business and they're like, it's worth $1 million. And it may only be worth $1 million if you stay involved. And the whole point is they want to get out, they want to retire. And it's really a tragedy that no one has explained to them that in some ways, it's not taken away from anything they've done, but like, it's not actually a business. Like, it's them, right? And customers use and choose their home services company because they've known them for 25 years and they're trustworthy and they have a great reputation. But that's them. That's not a transferable, SOP driven, someone else can come in tomorrow and run it the same way. That's a very different thing. And so it's kind of a tragedy. It's why I'm trying to, shout from the rooftops a little bit more. And I was glad you said this, Justin, because spot on. If you wake up today and you want to sell your business in 6 months, yeah, technically you can. It's kind of too late. You really need to be making these changes, working on these things, doing these things 2 to 3 years before you hope to sell, because all these little things compound into value over time. And if you don't give yourself enough time, you can sell, but you'll get a fraction of what the business should be worth. But if you give yourself time, you start making these changes, you start setting it up differently, you start identifying these buyers early, that's when you have the best opportunity to maximize the outcome.
My dad fits the category of, I mean, he's poked around like trying to sell his business, makes good money for himself, but not at a scale where, the real kind of buyers, come in at that, 3 million EBITDA plus. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into like buying a business. I can tell you on the PE side, we look for all those different areas to get the price, down. Even what I did, like just in software, like I would know telling a software founder like how to maximize value just because I was on the, buy side. Like I'm curious, because you had all that distribution, like did they just analyze that cross-sell opportunity, project those cash flows out, discount it back to, today, or put some multiple on that number to kind of value that distribution channel? Or
it's an interesting question, because one of the things that I often think is I don't know or
were they successful even doing it?
I mean, the reality is, you kind of, as a seller, I mean, you want the buyer to win. That's the best case scenario. But to me, it was like, I don't even care how they came up with the math. I mean, I was arguing that was the value because I could look and see what their packages were and how many customers we had and just do math and say, well, if 10% of them converted, here's what that's worth. If 25% converted, here's what that's worth. And so to me, I was making the arguments, so I think that's a key part of the founder's opportunity. I won't even call it responsibility. A lot of founders or entrepreneurs are going to go, they're going to get ready to exit and they're going to hire an M&A firm, or they're going to hire a broker and investment banker. And those individuals, there's some great ones and they're pedigreed and they're smart, but they'll never, be able to do what I just said. Like, that's not the way their minds work. They don't know your business. They don't know your industry. They're going to go to private equity. They're going to go to strategics and they're going to talk to them very intelligently because they're very smart humans typically. But that's not the same as you looking at competitors or looking at people outside your industry and doing the math and taking that argument even to your banker. Like, giving that same argument to the banker is also important. So to me, I always said that's my either responsibility or opportunity to figure out the math, because I mean, to some degree, you can call it whatever multiple you want. I mean, I never sold a company on a financial multiple, and I would only sell for what I was willing to sell for. So it's like, okay, I'll sell for 10 million. Well, how do you get to 10 million? Well, let me show you. Well, yeah, but you only did, $250,000 in EBITDA. I'm like, I don't care. Do you want these customers or not? It's not about the EBITDA.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. Key switch.
I like that. Well, Mac, this has been freaking awesome. And where can people find you?
So, I have a website, maclackey.com, MacLackey.com. And then on social media, kind of at Mac Lackey, pretty much everywhere. Try to put a lot of free stuff out there to help entrepreneurs. I'm pretty passionate about it. So that's the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Well, again, I think it's awesome what you're doing. If you guys go check out Mac, learn from him. He's obviously doing a bunch of great stuff. If you want to sell your business, which I think is very important, whether you don't feel like you want to sell it right now, in the future, you might want to. So go check out his stuff. And again, Mac, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.